This year, we tried all the food at the International Food and Wine Festival, and I mean all the food. We've got a ton of stuff to cover, including some really important tips to help you make sure you have the best possible time when you're here. Let's get to it. Hi-ho everybody, this is Rob with Ear Scouts coming to you from the 2023 Epcot International Food and Wine Festival. We have been coming to this festival now for like a week straight. I feel like we've had breakfast, lunch, and dinner here. We've been trying all of the amazing food at all of the booths so that we could give you our impressions of everything there is to eat. We're also, of course, going to try some of the delicious drinks, but our goal is to let you know what things you should definitely try while you're here and what things you can maybe skip. The first thing that's really important to know about food and wine, unlike the other festivals that happen here at Epcot, there's not a lot outside of the food and wine. So at the other festivals, you can meet artists or see some amazing topiaries or hear holiday storytellers, but at this festival, the focus is entirely on delicious food and refreshing drinks. Our very first stop is Coastal Eats because, you know, the first thing you want in the morning is fish, right? There's actually no fish this year. There's a crab dish and an oyster dish. If you've watched our channel before, you know I am not a huge fish fan. I don't like seafood, but I really did enjoy the Oysters Rockefeller dish here. It's kind of got a more spinach cheese flavor than an oyster flavor, which of course was right up my alley. The other item on offer was a crab cake. We were not as fond of that one. It's a very small portion, and to me it tasted surprisingly fishy. Eric agreed it wasn't one of his favorite crab cakes, so I'd say you can probably skip on that one. Quick tip as we head over to our next booth, and this is a big one. It is hot as blazes in Orlando right now. Plus, if you're trying any of the alcoholic drinks on offer, they can be very dehydrating. Make sure you bring one of these water bottles with you. Even if you don't though, any of the different restaurants in the park that have a soda fountain can give you a complimentary cup of water. But what I like to do is I like to bring my water bottle to one of the different quick service restaurants that has a soda fountain accessible to the guests, because you can use that soda fountain to refill your water. The plus side of doing it there, it's usually chilled and it's usually filtered. Much better water than you're gonna get from the fountains around the park. The three spots I recommend doing that here are Connections Eatery, which is right up here in the front, over in World Nature at Sunshine Seasons, and if you're in the back of the park, your soda fountain spot is going to be Regal Eagle Smokehouse in the American Adventure Pavilion. Now let's go head to our next booth and keep eating. We're gonna actually move away from Fry Basket just because it's right next to Test Track, and Test Track can be a little loud. I want to talk about the food that was on offer there. It is definitely one of the favorite festival booths. There's a plant-based dish that is yuca fries. What I loved about that, it comes with a creamy sauce. It was rich and creamy and delicious. The fries were nice and crispy on the outside and soft and starchy on the inside. Definitely a great plant-based pick. The second item I want to talk about is the pickle fries. Now, a lot of times when you get pickle fries, they're kind of thinly sliced, and it's kind of more about being deep fried than about the pickle. These are spears, so if you're a pickle lover, these are packed with pickle flavor. We're gonna talk a lot about pickles in this video. There's a pickle shake, believe it or not. We're gonna be trying that a little bit later. And then the star of the show at the Fry Basket, the French fry flight. So there are three different fries on offer in the flight. You get a malt and vinegar, which is a plant-based fry. Then there is a barbecue fry that was actually my favorite. There's some bacon on there, definitely not plant-based, but it's got a really nice sweet and savory barbecue flavor. And then to finish it off for dessert, there are sweet potato fries. It's just like an elevated deep fried version of your favorite Thanksgiving treat, sweet potato casserole. Our next booth is also the first stop on Emile's Fromage Montage. If you're unfamiliar with that, pick up one of these festival passports when you come into the park or at any of the festival food booths. Inside, you're gonna find not only menus for all the different festival booths, but you're also gonna find on the back page, Emile's Fromage Montage. So this is like where you're gonna get your passport stamped. There are specific food options that are all cheese-based at different spots around around the festival. When you try that particular food item, they will stamp your passport. If you get 5 of those stamps, you can get the last stamp at Shimmering Sips for a completer treat that is complimentary. So you pay for the first 5, you get the 6th one for free. Right now, there are 8 different items on offer for Emile's Fromage Montage. As this festival goes on, some other booths are gonna be opening later. That is gonna bring the total number of items to 12. If you wanna know which things are on the Fromage Montage right now though, we'll be covering those in this video. And at the bottom of the screen in the little description, we'll have a little cheese wedge to let you know that item is on Fromage Montage. For right now, we're gonna start with our first Fromage Montage item at Flavors from Fire. It is a smoked corned beef served over freshly made potato chips with a beer cheese fondue. And if that sounds heavenly, let me tell you, it is. It is one of my favorite things, and I was so glad to see that it came back and it was just as good as it has been in the past. There's also a plant-based Impossible Burger here with wasabi cream. This was at a different booth last year, and it was actually one of our favorite items. We are sad to say that this year, it was definitely not a favorite. It's kind of the weakest of the plant-based offerings we had, I think, and that's really sad because, again, last year it was amazing. But that does bring me to a point that I think is really important to know about all the food reviews we're gonna give you or that you're gonna see anywhere else on the internet. Disney's biggest problem with food is consistency. Something that might be incredible and delicious one day or even 1 hour could be not so great an hour or a day later. Some tips that can help you make sure that you do get really great food at the festival though, make sure you go when there's a line. That means that everything is gonna be prepared fresh. Sometimes when you go up and there's no line, you're like, ooh, great, I can grab a quick snack without waiting. But the problem is that food has been waiting a while for you to show up. Continuing on though with the items here from Flavors from Fire, there's a chimichurri skirt steak taco. The meat was pretty good. It paired nicely with the guac and the other flavors that were there, but the tortilla was awful. I mean, it was just chewy and not a great base for this dish. Last but not least, food-wise, there was a chocolate tart, and this one had a barbecue potato chip crust, which was definitely unusual. I couldn't really taste the whiskey caramel sauce. It mainly had a nice rich chocolate flavor, and I did enjoy the contrast of that barbecue chip flavor, even though it was a little bit unexpected. We also tried the bourbon barrel Zinfandel here. Those are typically served a little chilled, not completely chilled, but when we got it here, it tasted like it came straight from the fridge. Honestly though, I wasn't complaining because a chilled glass of red wine was actually quite refreshing. For our next booth, we're gonna hang out with 2 of my favorite Muppets, Dr. Bunsen Honeydew and Beaker. One of my favorite things about this being a festival booth year after year, this is the Odyssey Pavilion. There is a ton of air-conditioned seating. Now, at peak times, you might have to wait a little bit for a seat, but it is definitely worth it. Not only to get some much-needed air conditioning, but also there's a cute show going on. About every 4 or 5 minutes, there will be a short from Beaker and Dr. Bunsen Honeydew up on the screen. They're really cute. It is worth spending a little bit of time in here and watching some of those shorts, especially if you've got fans of the Muppets in your crew. So let's talk food at this booth. I'm gonna give this booth my award for most improved overall. Last year when we came to Brew Wing, all the wings that we tried were kind of gummy, not very tasty, not well fried. This year, however, every single wing we tried was crispy and delicious. They had some basic wings like your traditional buffalo wings. Those were pretty much what you would expect, but a very good rendition of it. They also had a garlic Parmesan wing for those who aren't fans of the buffalo flavor. It wasn't overpoweringly garlicky, it just had a nice rich sauce. Now for the more adventurous among you, you might want to try the peanut butter and jelly wings. These are returning from last year. They changed the name up a little bit. We did not enjoy these last year, but this year they were delicious. You could definitely taste that peanut sauce in there and the sweetness from the jelly. And if you're even more adventurous than than that, you might want to try the unnecessarily spicy Scotch bonnet wings. These have curry in them, so to me they reminded me of a dish you might get at your local Indian restaurant. I didn't find them to be crazy spicy. I mean, they were definitely spicy, don't get me wrong. These were not mild, but they weren't the spiciest wings I've ever had. Last but certainly not least, for the traditional wings, I want to talk about my favorite, and that was the orange cardamom wings. Now, if you've never had cardamom before, it is a very unique spice. These were sweet, they were very mildly spiced, but the cardamom really came through, and I enjoyed them a lot. Two other dishes that you might want to try while you're here are plant-based dishes. There are Impossible buffalo wings. I love these. I might have even liked them more than some of the traditional wings. It was really, really tasty. The buffalo sauce was great, but what I loved the most, the vegan, creamy kind of blue cheese ranch-like sauce was delicious. Disney is really hitting the mark with these plant-based creamy sauces this year, so hats off for that. If you're not feeling the Impossible vibe, you want something a little bit more traditional and recognizable as natural food, you might want to go with the Brussels sprouts. They've got that same buffalo sauce and creamy sauce on top. We enjoyed these last year and we love them again this year. It's a great plant-based pick. So now let's talk about some of the more controversial items on the menu. They are the beverages here. This is where Honeydew and Beaker have done some experimenting with the menu. Probably the one you're gonna hear about everywhere from this festival, on Instagram, on Facebook. Anyone who comes is gonna be talking about this, the pickle shake. So I tried the pickle shake. I was a little wary. The good news is there's no vinegar. I think that would have definitely made this a really gross shake. The bad news is it is a very strong dill flavor, which for me did not pair all that well with kind of a sweet vanilla milkshake base. You might love it if you're a huge fan of dill and you're a big fan of unusual flavors. You might dig this one. The other frozen beverage that's on offer here is kind of like a slushie with what they're calling orange ice cream particles. Honestly, it didn't taste anything like ice cream. What this tasted like to me was a red popsicle and an orange popsicle thrown in a blender. If you're looking for an ice cream flavor, you're not gonna find it here. Think more ice pops turned into a smoothie. Before we head into World Showcase, we're gonna make a pit stop here at World Nature. Now, there are no food booths back here, unfortunately, but what there is over here is a ride. Now, we're not gonna be riding a bunch of rides in this video. If you wanna know how to balance rides with the festival, we did a video called Practically Perfect Day at an Epcot festival. We'll put a link to that in the description down below. But in that video, we kind of show you how you can use Genie Plus to balance your day between getting your festival stuff done and still enjoying the great rides that are here. For this video though, there's just one ride we're gonna be doing. It's Living with the Land, because there are some very specific things they've added just for this festival. Let's go check it out. For those who've never ridden it, Living with the Land is a relaxing boat ride where you learn about agriculture and sustainability. But during this festival, they point out the different plants that you can taste when you're going around the World Showcase. It shows you what booths you can find that particular plant. I love it because for fruits that you maybe wouldn't encounter in your day-to-day life back home, like guava, you can see what does a guava plant look like? Or even for the things that you eat every day, like chocolate, how often do you get to see what a cacao plant looks like? While there is one more spot you can get a bite to eat in the front of the park, that is Connections Eatery. They have a special festival item. I want to talk about that later in this video because it's one of my favorite to-go items. For now, it is time to start trotting around the globe. Let's head into World Showcase. Sadly, the very first booth you come to here in World Showcase, Hawaii, is not open yet. So the first booth that we're coming to that we are going to check out is Australia. First off, in Australia, we tried the bushberry shrimp. It's got a nice kind of sweet and sour sauce flavor. While this wasn't a huge amount of food, it was a perfect item to get if you're looking for a small snack. Now, the lamb chop is back from last year. This was one of our favorites then, and we love it again this year. It's got a nice, not too gamey, rich flavor. It was nice and tender, and we enjoyed the pairing with the herby sauce and the crunchy potato chips. Last up, let's talk about the dessert item. It is called lambing Wellington. This is a traditional Australian cake. Last year, full disclosure, we did not dig this dish. It was really dry and that kind of took away from the whole thing for us. It's a very basic dessert though. It's something you might find at a birthday party, but this year it was really moist and had a nice rich buttery flavor, and it's a great pick for those picky eaters who don't want to try anything too adventurous. Next stop is our first World Showcase Pavilion. It is Canada. We're gonna start Remi's Hide and Squeak. This is the annual scavenger hunt for this festival. You're gonna pick up one of these maps at the gift shops around the park. It's $9.99. You do get a discount if you're DVC annual pass or cast. This map is gonna have all the different spots around the World Showcase, and then it's got a little sheet of stickers inside. You'll notice on these stickers there is an ingredient that Remi has found in that part of the world. So what you're gonna do when you find Remi, you're going to determine what ingredient he has, then you're gonna match that ingredient sticker with the country on your map. One important thing I should mention, they're not all World Showcase countries. Some of them are just related to the food booths. So for example, Coastal Eats is a spot. I sadly didn't even realize that until I got here into World Showcase. I'm gonna have to backtrack for that one. So don't make the same mistake I did. Start hunting for Remi as soon as you get in the park. When you're all done, you'll be able to trade in your map for a special prize, and we'll check those out later in this video. Of course, there's more to do for the festival than hiding and squeaking here in Canada. There are two different food booths on offer. There's the traditional Canada food booth, which is gonna offer items from Le Cellier, which is the signature steakhouse restaurant here in Canada. And then there is Refreshment Port, which offers poutine treats all year round, but they have special poutines that they do only for the festivals. We'll start there at Refreshment Port. They did the same poutine again this year as they did last year. It's a braised beef poutine, but we didn't love this one last year because it was a little bit dry. There wasn't any gravy. I think Disney was listening because this year it was not dry at all. They definitely added a lot of gravy to that braised beef. It was delicious. Next up, let's head back to that Canada food booth. We tried the two things that were on offer there. One of them is on Emile's Fromage Montage. That is the cheese soup that's offered year-round at Le Cellier. We didn't really love either of the items on offer as much as we did last year. The soup tasted like it had maybe been sitting under a heat lamp for a little while. The filet mignon we loved last year. It was tender and rich and buttery, and it tasted just like it did when you get it at the steakhouse. This year, it definitely tasted like it had been sitting for a little while. Your mileage may vary. If you come when it's being served fresh, it could be just as delicious as it was for us last year. Here in the UK Pavilion, you will find the Ireland food booth, which is actually our runner-up for best booth of the festival this year. We loved everything in Ireland, even the seafood pie, which if you watched our videos last year, you may remember I had a hard time getting down a bite of that seafood pie. Definitely not my jam. Last year it was really watery and super fishy. This year it was much creamier, not overly fishy. It definitely had a fishy flavor. I'm not gonna lie. This is not one of my favorite things. I wouldn't choose it, but Eric loves seafood and he absolutely loved it. I also love this little drink right here. I love it so much, I just got it again today. It is coffee, chocolate, Baileys, and Guinness all whipped up into a shake. This year, they are not able to keep this thing frozen. It's just too hot out. The machines can't keep up. So do know it won't be like a shake. It's gonna be more like an iced coffee drink, but it is super delicious. But believe it or not, as good as these things were, they weren't even the stars of this booth. That's how good this booth was this year. My favorite item was the roasted Irish sausage. The gravy was nice and rich and meaty flavor. There was definitely some onion in that gravy. The whole dish was just 5 stars. Love this one. I know we are definitely gonna come back and have this again. And then for dessert, this was one of our favorites last year. It's back again this year. It's a warm chocolate cake. It's like a pudding cake. So think of like a flourless chocolate cake, and then the whole thing is topped with an Irish cream liqueur custard. Holy cow, is this thing good. If you love chocolate and Irish cream, put this on your list. It is worth the calories. And now, messieurs et mademoiselles, we are here in the country that is best known for their food and wine. It is time for France. I'm actually really excited because in just a couple weeks, we are headed to Disneyland Paris. So if you're excited to see something from Paris or Disneyland Paris, let us know in the comments down below. We are going to be making some videos while we're there, and we'll try to squeeze in some of the things that you guys really want us to cover while we're across the pond. But for right now, let's focus on the Paris that is right here, the France booth. First up is an item we did not love last year. It is a cheese-filled beignet, and last year it kind of tasted like someone took a jelly donut and took the jelly out and put in like a cheesy bechamel sauce. This year, it seems Disney was listening because a lot of folks complained about how sweet it was, and it is definitely much less sweet. I still wouldn't say that I love it, but I would say that I liked it this year. And if that sounds like something you were excited to try, I would say this year, give it a whirl. It's really much better than it was before. Next up, let's talk about the Buff Bourguignon. This, the first time I tried it, was one of my favorite things from the festival. I tried it again. I didn't like it quite as much. Again, consistency can be an issue. It was still good, but the first time, it was heavenly. Now, to start with, the first time I had it, I looked at it and there was what looked like tater tots with it, which to me, I thought Remi would just be appalled at the idea of Buff Bourguignon with tater tots. But when I tasted the tater tot, holy cow, it was heavenly. It was just infused with butter and it was delicious. The beef was fall apart tender. The whole thing was rich and delicious. Now, when we came back and had it again, because I wanted to share it with Eric, he wasn't with me the first time, it was a totally different dish. There were no tater tot things. There were these sort of potato puffs, which probably is what was supposed to be with it to begin with. I guess maybe because it was one of the first days of the festival, they were subbing, but I actually liked the sub better. The puffs were good, but they didn't have that rich, buttery flavor. So if you come on a day when they're out of the real puffs, you're gonna really enjoy those tater tot things. Next up, let's talk about the escargot. This was one of our favorites last year. This was actually one of our best items from the festival. This year they changed it up. Last year it was inside of a brioche. This year it is a croissant filled with the escargot and a creamy sauce. I just like the brioche better. That's really all it is to it. This was still very good. If you've never had escargot before, this is a great kind of safe way to try it because it's ensconced in this delicious bread and sauce, so it's kind of a safe way to experiment with eating snails. Last but certainly not least, let's talk about the creme brulee. Now, the good news about this, sometimes when you get these mass-produced creme brulees where they have to serve a whole bunch of them, they don't have that signature crispy, crunchy top. It just kind of becomes soggy from sitting. Not the case. This one was super crunchy, super caramelized, and delicious. My only complaint with this dish, honestly, was the berry on the bottom. It kind of cut the richness of it. Some people might like that. Some people who think that maybe a vanilla creme brulee is too rich for them will like that berry cutting into that. But for me, that's the whole point. I love the richness of that dessert, and I would prefer to have had it without the berry. After France in the World Showcase, you will find Morocco. But before we get to Morocco, there's actually two booths that are tucked in between. First up is Brazil, and the featured dish there, I know I'm gonna mispronounce this, but it's feijoada. Let me know in the comments down below how badly I butchered that, but it is a dish consisting of pork belly with beans over rice. The whole thing is beautifully seasoned. If you're a fan of beans and rice with, like here in the South, a lot of times we'll throw some fat back in the beans. If that's your jam, this is gonna be really delicious for you. Next up on the menu at Brazil is pão de queijo. Now this is an Emile's Fromage Montage item. It is a bread that is filled with Brazilian cheese. It's a very mild cheese. Next door, you'll find the Belgium booth. Now last year we did not love the waffles, which I know, Belgium, that's like the signature dish, Belgian waffles. They tasted kind of like they'd been sitting under a heat lamp for a really long time. We didn't dig them. This year they were nice and fresh, so we did enjoy that. But I will say, you're probably gonna get better waffles than you're gonna find at this booth at your local diner. I mean, they were good, but they weren't great. I still think it's something you can skip, especially for the price. They're very small for the amount that's being charged for them. They also have a braised beef dish. We loved the Gouda mashed potatoes that came with it, and I love that the gravy had a strong carrot flavor, but the beef itself was not as tender as I would have liked. Last but certainly not least, from the Belgian booth is one of our favorite drinks from this festival. I think this deserves a Best of the Festival award because we keep coming back for it. It is an iced coffee. It's nice and creamy and sweet, and it has liqueurs in there that really give it a nice boozy punch. It's definitely going to be our go-to coffee when we're in this park. Well, when we're not looking for something quite as boozy as the option back in Ireland. As we head into Morocco, I want to share another quick water tip. There is a really great spot to get chilled water. Now, they don't love you to refill your bottles here, but if you go inside of Spice Road Table, right where you would check in, they have a couple of dispensers with chilled water, and there are cups there. So you can just grab a cup, fill up some chilled water. You don't need to be a guest at Spice Road Table. Everyone is welcome. If you must fill up your water bottle, be discreet, fill up the cup, and then pour it into your water bottle. Morocco is always one of our favorites at these festivals, but this year we are actually picking Morocco as our best festival booth of the year. Everything we had here was incredibly delicious. Now, it is true, Morocco has a little bit of an unfair advantage. These other festival booths, they're mostly like little huts. Morocco has a full kitchen with a wood-fired bread oven because their booth is the Tangerine Cafe. That does give them a leg up on the competition, but they are taking full advantage of it. Everything there is super good this year. So let's go through the menu. First off, there is the fresh baked bread that comes out of that wood-fired oven, and man, it is heavenly all by itself. But they pair it with some really nice sauces and a hummus. So there's two kind of herb-based sauces and then a pretty traditional hummus. Really, the star of that show is the bread itself. It's just so good when you get it straight from the oven. Next up, we tried some of the meat skewers. So they had a chicken skewer and a lamb skewer. The chicken really could taste the smokiness from where it had just been char grilled. Really nice flavor, and it pairs so beautifully with this kind of salad they put with it. You've got some kind of Moroccan spices, and then there's some sweetness coming in from the raisins. It's just crunchy, spicy, sweet, delicious. Next up, we tried the lamb. This is gonna be the best lamb you're gonna have at this festival. It is so good. It is more like a sausage than a straight up like cut of lamb, but it's full of great Moroccan spices. It is juicy, it is tender, and it was really one of our favorite meat dishes of the festival. Next up was a falafel pita with tahini sauce. It was really soft and tender on the inside. It had a nice fresh herb flavor, and the whole thing was fried nice and crispy. We really enjoyed it this year. Also, the pita tasted nice and fresh this year. Last but certainly not least, the pistachio cake. Now, they totally changed this up from last year. Last year, we didn't even like it. We kind of compared it to a Little Debbie snack. This year, one of the best desserts, if not the best dessert you're gonna have at this festival. Heavenly. It's got these wonderful, warm, kind of autumnal spices in the pistachio cream in the center. The cake was just so delicate and moist. We love this. We will definitely be coming back to get it again before this festival is done. Before we leave Morocco, I've got another quick tip for you guys. I just checked my watch. We have walked 6 miles so far in this video. That's a lot of steps. If your feet are killing you, you're here in Morocco, I've got good news. There is a friendship boat that will actually take you all the way back up to Canada. So if you want to head out for a break, you're going to go head up to the buses. That's a great way to save yourself some steps, and it's a lovely cruise through the World Showcase Lagoon. Our next booth is between Morocco and Japan, and I think it wins the award for the cutest booth in the festival. The Imagineers really outdid themselves with the Greece booth. I just love all the hanging flowers. It's really well done. All right, so let's talk food here at the Greece booth. Starting off with the spanakopita. It's a classic Greek appetizer. This one's good, it's solid. The pastry's nice and flaky. It's got a nice cheesy spinachy flavor in the middle. It's basically what you would expect from a good spanakopita. Next up is an Emile's Fromage Montage item, and this is one of my favorites. It is griddled cheese with pistachios and honey. And what I love about this, they get that crispy char on it, which is my favorite part of any cheese dish. When there's like burnt cheese on top, that's the part I want to eat. Well, this whole dish is basically that. The honey just cuts against that saltiness of the cheese. The pistachio adds a little extra crunch. I definitely recommend putting that one on your list for Emile's Fromage Montage because it's one of the best ones you can get. Next up is the lamb gyro. I don't know, some people say hero, I say gyro. Some people say gyro. Let us know in the comments, what do you say? Gyro, hero, gyro? I'm gonna tell you, whatever it is that you say at your local sandwich shop, you should probably say it there instead of here because it's not a great version of this dish. The bread was really dry. The gyro meat itself was fine, but nothing extraordinary. The key word here was dry. It kind of needed more sauce. The lamb needed to be juicier, and most importantly, the bread needed to be fresher. Last but certainly not least, there is an impossible plant-based moussaka. This one was actually surprisingly good, although it's not like any moussaka I've had before. The top, of course, was not gonna have any dairy in it because it's vegan, it's plant-based, but it still tasted nice and creamy. The base of the dish, though, had that eggplant that you would expect, and then it had, I think it was raisins, honestly. It was something very sweet. There was kind of a cinnamony sweetness to the whole thing, which maybe that's traditional. I've never had a moussaka that tasted quite like that. I'm not saying I didn't like it, I enjoyed it, but just be prepared. It's not a totally savory dish. It's gonna be kind of a cross between savory, creamy, and sweet. Quick tip as we head into the Japan pavilion, make sure you come back into this pavilion and check out the kind of bamboo garden that's back here. The reason I say you should check it out is because when you get food from that food booth, there are always tables back here. A lot of people don't even know this is back here, and it's a great spot to get a seat, to get a table to eat off of, as opposed to a trash can, which, not gonna lie, I've eaten a lot of festival food off the top of a trash can, so this is luxury dining. And to have shade on top of it, man, that is a win-win-win all the way around. But let's talk about the food from this year's booth. So to start out with, there was a really nice teriyaki bun, pretty basic but good teriyaki sauce with some chicken. And the bao bun, though, was nice and fresh. Your mileage may vary on that. Obviously, it depends on when you get it. If that bao bun wasn't so fresh, I imagine it would be just kind of an average dish. But when we had it, it was really delicious. The second dish we tried, it was kind of a ground beef over sticky rice dish. This one we were pretty split on. Eric enjoyed it. He liked this dish. For me, I could not get past the fact that the beef was really gristly. The rice was pretty basic sticky rice. For me though, it was just the consistency of the beef I couldn't get past. Lastly, let's talk about the sushi. I didn't try this one. Eric did like it though. He said it was, in his words, a solid step up from what you might find at like quick service around Disney World, but it wasn't amazing. Like, he's definitely had better sushi at the Japan booths before, but he still thought it was pretty good. As you come into the American Adventure Pavilion, your first stop is actually going to be the funnel cake stand. They have a special festival funnel cake. They kind of do one for every festival, but this year, it is definitely one you want to check out. Back in Morocco, I mentioned that that dessert was one of our favorites that we had, but if I had to pick my personal favorite of this whole festival, I would pick that funnel cake. It was insanely good. You start with a base of funnel cake, and what I liked about this one, as opposed to previous festivals, the funnel cake was a good size. A lot of times the funnel cake they give you is really small. This one was a good size funnel cake, but then they topped it with vanilla ice cream, maple syrup, and bacon. It was like the most delicious waffles with bacon and syrup, and then make the whole thing deep fried and put some ice cream on top. It was over the top, but delicious. Next up, I want to talk about Eat to the Beat. So that's the concert series that happens at this festival. Each of the festivals has a concert series with the exception of Festival of the Holidays, which has the candlelight processional. In that one, they have different celebrity narrators that come in. But for the rest of the festivals, though, it's different musical musical acts. I would say that whether or not this is worth it just totally depends on the act that's there when you're here and if it's something that you're interested in. If it is something you're interested in though, here's a couple of tips that will help you enjoy it. Number one, if you don't want to wait in lines at all, you just want to come and see the show like you have a ticket to see the show, then you're going to want to do what's called the Eat to the Beat dining package. The downside of doing this is it comes with a sit-down table reservation at one of the restaurants, and if you're trying to eat a lot of things at this festival, you probably don't want to add a sit-down meal into your day. But that is the option for getting a hard ticket to this event. You'll queue up separately from everyone else, and then you'll get basically the best seats right in front of the stage. Now, if you don't want to do the dining package, you can, of course, wait in a standby queue, but I should warn you, for really popular acts, there's going to be a long line that forms pretty early in the day for that first show. But the good news is, if you don't mind about not going to the first show, which for me, I actually prefer the later shows because it gets a little bit darker and you can actually see the lights of the concert, whereas during the daytime, you kind of lose all that. If you want to go to a later show, you can usually show up really a little bit after the show before it starts and get in line then. You're going to get a great seat and you don't end up spending your whole day waiting in line to see the show. So now let's talk food here at the American Adventure Pavilion. The booth this year is Flavors of America, and they've really totally changed everything up. This year, it's really focusing more on the flavors brought by immigrants to America. The hot beef sandwich, I'm not gonna lie, it was the worst thing we had at this whole festival. We actually couldn't even finish it. It's the only thing that we tossed. I have seen some other folks have said that they loved it. When I had it, the au jus that came with it was saltier than seawater. In addition, the sandwich itself was bone dry. It really didn't have a lot of flavor. It desperately needed the au jus, but you couldn't dip it in the au jus. Next up is the cioppino, which is like a seafood stew. I may be butchering that name. I actually wasn't familiar with that dish before this festival. I tried a little bit of it just to try it. I was not a fan. It was very, very fishy. Eric had mixed feelings about this. He said that one of the shellfish that was in the stew tasted kind of off to him, and that kind of put him off of the whole dish, but he felt like other than that, it wasn't bad. So it could have just been a batch where we just happened to get an off piece of shellfish and that wouldn't happen to you. But as a result, he didn't really love it. He felt like it was kind of off-putting. Next was the chilaquiles. Now, I love chilaquiles. I've had a lot of really authentic chilaquiles in Mexico. This is not authentic chilaquiles. That said, it was pretty tasty. So if you've never had chilaquiles before, they are basically tortilla chips that are sauteed, cooked in like a green sauce, kind of a Mexican salsa. There was also some chicken. I think they described it as ranchero chicken on top. And then there was a poached egg. I did love the poached egg and getting the kind of runny egg yolk all over everything. That was probably my favorite part of this dish. It tasted all right. It really wasn't bad. It just wasn't like chilaquiles that I've had before. And last, let's talk about that carrot cake. This is a returning dish from last year. I loved it last year. I loved it again this year. They say it is fresh baked, although I will say this year it did not seem very fresh. It did seem like it had been sitting for a while, but it was still tasty. The star of the show really is the cream cheese frosting. It's like molten hot cream cheese frosting that they kind of drizzle all over the top, and it is crazy delicious. Next up, let's say buongiorno to Italia. Now, this is one of those pavilions that I feel like bloggers and vloggers, they like to make fun of Italy and say how bad the food is at all the festivals. It really has gotten a lot better recently. The last few festivals, we've had lots of things that we really enjoyed here. This festival was no different. Now, there was one dish I would say you should probably steer clear of. That was the cavatelli. It was the pasta. I think it almost tasted sort of like the store-bought gnocchi that you get, where it kind of has that chewy texture to it. The sauce was kind of blah, didn't have a lot of flavor. Again, the whole thing just kind of tasted like something you might get from a supermarket. But let's get past that dish and talk about the stuff that was really good. There's a focaccia dish this year. To me, I think the best way to describe this, it's like a grown-up meatball sub. Tender, lots of flavor. The pomodoro sauce on top was nice. The focaccia tasted really fresh. And most of all, that burrata just kind of added a creaminess. It's definitely a solid upgrade from the mozzarella or provolone that you probably get on your meatball sub back home. If you love meatball subs, this is kind of like an upgraded version. Last but not least, let's talk about the cheesecake. I really love the cheesecake this year. It is a traditional Italian style cheesecake, so don't expect that super rich kind of flavor you would get from a New York style cheesecake. This one's gonna have more of a light, almost kind of citrusy note going on in there. I really appreciated that the cheesecake was on the lighter side. It wasn't super heavy, because when it's really hot outside, you don't want a really rich, heavy dessert in the middle of the day, so it really hit the spot for me. In the real world, you should not look for Spain to be somewhere between Italy and Germany, because you're not going to find it there. But here at this festival, that's exactly where you're going to find Spain. So we really enjoyed the Spain booth again this year. Last year we were really surprised by how much we liked the paella. I was surprised because I don't really like paella usually, and I enjoyed it. It had a nice sausagey flavor. This year, unfortunately, I did not like it as much as last year. It definitely had less of that sausage flavor. The sausage itself was actually kind of bland this year. You really did taste the shrimp. So if you're a big shrimp fan, you might still enjoy it. I did not enjoy it as much as I did last year. My favorite item from this booth, though, was charcuterie in a cup, which I've never seen that before, but it was very clever. It's very convenient to be able to carry your charcuterie around, and it was good. The cheese was really delicious. Next up, there was a seafood salad. Eric liked this one a lot. So if you're a big seafood lover, you probably will enjoy this. I didn't care for it. I can't really speak to it because I took one bite and I was like, yeah, that's not for me. Lastly, we did get a drink here. I love sangria, so I was excited to try the Spanish sangria. I did not dig it. I tried the red sangria. There's no fruit in it, and I'm used to having fruit in sangria. It just kind of tasted like chilled red wine with maybe a little bit of seltzer in there. Not my favorite drink of the festival, but if you like a really simple sangria that's really dry, you might enjoy it. Next stop is Germany, and there is so much delicious food in Germany this year. There are two booths. There's the traditional Germany booth, and then there is an Alps booth, just like last year. But the other thing that I want to mention, you don't want to sleep on the delicious treats that are here at Epcot all year round. We did a full video at last year's festival where we pitted festival food against some of your favorite Epcot treats that are here all year round. Surprisingly, the Epcot treats actually won in that. So if you want to check out that video, we'll link it down below. But the moral of the story is try to save a little bit of room to taste some of these special things that are really iconic here at Epcot. One of those spots is Caramel Kucha. They're most probably known for their caramel popcorn. It's made fresh and it's really delicious. I just love trying almost anything from the case. I try something different every time. Today, I tasted the Snickerdoodle cookie that was stuffed with cream cheese frosting and caramel. Holy cow, it's delicious. Some other really popular ones over in France, anything you get at Les Halles, that bakery is incredible. And over in Norway, the school bread is a great treat that you really want to try. So if you're only here during festivals, which let's face it, it's almost always festival time at Epcot these days, you want to make sure that you make a little bit of time to try those treats that are here all year round that are really iconic and delicious. So let's talk about the festival food here in Germany. First off, there's the Schenkennudeln, which is kind of like a German version of mac and cheese. That's going to be the Fromage Montage item in the Germany booth. I really enjoyed that this year. It comes back year after year. It's kind of a perennial favorite here. This year was definitely better than last. Last year I felt like the cheese was a little too mild. I didn't really taste the cheese in the dish. This year, definitely a lot cheesier. Keep in mind though, it's more of like a Gruyere cheese if you've had that before. It's not as sharp as a traditional American mac and cheese, but it's really creamy, and the ham that's in there adds a little nice salty meatiness to the dish. It is one of my favorite Fromage Montage items. Next up there was bratwurst served on a pretzel roll with mustard. I gotta be honest, I didn't love this one. If you're in the mood for sausage, I would say go back and get that delicious sausage in Ireland, because this one just didn't really have a lot of flavor. The mustard pretty much overpowered everything. The pretzel roll itself was kind of dry. It definitely wasn't one of my favorites from the festival. I'd say probably want to skip that one. For dessert at the Germany Pavilion, you'll find an apple strudel. It's made from fresh apple, you can tell, because the apple is sliced in all different sizes. There's big chunks and little diced apple, and I like the differences of texture that you get from that. It also has a little bit of kind of like a creme anglaise on the side, like a vanilla cream sauce. And that was actually really added a nice richness to the dish. I really enjoyed the strudel this year, and I'd say it's worth a try, especially if you're a fan of apple desserts. Next door in the Alps, you could tell Disney was paying attention to the comments that they got last year. So last year, they had the same thing going on in the Alps. It was the raclette cheese, which is that cheese that they kind of scrape off when it's all melty and delicious. But last year, it was really stinky. I mean, you could smell the Alps booth 3 booths down, and I think that was probably off-putting to a lot of folks. This year, they clearly got some milder raclette cheese, not nearly as stinky. It did have a milder flavor as well, but I did enjoy it. They served it with a little bit of bread and some potato, but the star is obviously the cheese. You can get it with or without ham. We chose to get it with the ham. Last year, the ham was kind of like a real traditional, like fresh ham that was cut. This year, it was more like a cold cut ham, which I imagine is probably more kid-friendly. There's also a dark chocolate fondue on offer, and this one was really nice. I enjoyed it a lot. Is it the most amazing fondue you're ever gonna have? No, but it is solid. It's pretty good. And I love the things that were on offer to dip in it. So there was, of course, the classic strawberry. There were some pieces of cake, and then there was some meringue, which I've never dipped meringue. Maybe that is traditional, but I really enjoyed the meringue, actually. It just kind of melts in your mouth. Once you pass those Alps, you're gonna find yourself in a whole new continent, because this is where sub-Saharan Africa lives at this festival. You're gonna find the Kenya booth here and Refreshment Outpost, which is kind of the all year round African-ish food and drink offering. Kenya was one of our favorites last year. We absolutely loved the Kenyan coffee rubbed beef, and we loved it again this year. If you've never had mealy pat before, that's what it's served on top of. It's kind of like creamy, cheesy grits that you would find here in the South. Really delicious and really just pairs beautifully with that spiced beef. I love the flavors in this beef. I do wish it was a little bit more tender. There was also a nice shrimp dish here. I'm not sure if I'm saying this correctly, but the peri-peri shrimp. I enjoyed it. It was a relatively small portion. So again, this is something if you're looking for a lighter bite. This had a really mild shrimp flavor. You really tasted the spices that it was seasoned with. Next door at Refreshment Outpost, I love this dish. It's back again. It was the same one that they had there last year. It's called Spicy Githery. It's got tons of flavor, lots of spices, not super hot, but it has a little bit of kick to it. If you're looking for a healthy, filling, more traditional vegetarian dish, this one is a really good option. Crossing the drawbridge from Africa, you will find yourself in Asia. A lot of folks don't realize that's actually a drawbridge. If you come in the afternoon when they're getting ready to set up for the fireworks, you might find yourself with a pretty long wait while that bridge is up. We're not here to talk about the drawbridge, we're here to talk about the delicious food in India. India is the first booth you're gonna come to before you get to China. One of our favorite drinks last year was in India. It was the mango lassi with the chai liqueur. I loved it again this year though, not quite as much as last year. I think it really just depends on the balance of the lassi and the liqueur. That combo of flavors is just heavenly. If you've never had mango lassi before, it's basically a yogurt-based drink, but it doesn't really taste like yogurt. It just kind of tastes like a mango milkshake. And then you throw in that chai liqueur and it's just bam, delicious. Also on the menu is an Emile's Fromage Montage item. You're gonna find a fried Indian cheese. It's like a paneer. Last year, we did not love this dish. It had no flavor at all. Disney was clearly taking notes. This year, it's got a lot more flavor. The cheese is nice and salty. It comes with a mango curry ketchup, which last year we did not love. They must have changed the recipe because I really didn't mind it this year. I wouldn't say it's my favorite sauce, but it was pretty good and it paired nicely with the cheese. They also had some samosas that were quite tasty. What I love in a samosa is I want it to be crunchy. I want it to taste like it was freshly prepared. And I love to have lots of bold, spicy smoky flavor on the inside. These did not disappoint. They checked all those boxes. The tikka masala was not my favorite. So my biggest complaint with the tikka masala, honestly, was the chicken itself was a little bit dry, which seemed odd to me because it was cooked in this sauce. I also felt like I wish the sauce was a little bit richer and creamier than it was. All in all, it was fine, but not one of my favorite dishes from the festival. Next door in China, the food booth was probably our most disappointing food booth of the festival. We really had high hopes for this one, and we just didn't dig any of the stuff that we got there. We started with the bao bun that's filled with duck, and now this one has been really popular. I know lots of people loved it. Our experience was not that great. The duck itself almost was like a jerky. It just tasted like it had been sitting under a heat lamp for days and days. The bao bun was not super fresh. This might be one of those that if you just got it at a different time, it might be delicious, but we didn't like it enough to try it again. Next were the dumplings, and these were kind of traditional pan-seared chicken dumplings. To me, they tasted kind of like the ones you get at Costco in the freezer section. They weren't anything special. The last food I want to talk about is the dan dan noodles. These had a nice, strong peanut sauce flavor. If you're a big fan of peanut sauce things, you'll probably enjoy it, but it was good, not great. It was a fairly filling dish, I would say, compared to the others, but it wasn't something I would come back for. Well, my friends, we have made it to the final country in the World Showcase, Mexico. This booth is usually one of my favorites, and the good news is the margarita and the dessert here are really tasty this year. The bad news is the two entree items I wasn't so crazy about, which is unusual because usually I love the main courses here at Mexico. Don't worry though, if you really want some good Mexican food, I enjoy heading next door to Choza de Margarita, where they mainly feature margaritas, but they also have some tasty empanadas and tacos there as well. Back to the booth. Let's talk about the food that's on offer here at the festival. We'll start with the good stuff. The margarita that I had, it was actually made with mezcal instead of tequila. It had a nice smoky flavor. It wasn't too sweet, which I appreciate in a margarita. The dessert was an impossible cake. In Mexico, you would make this by basically baking a custard and a cake all in one dish. They decided to cheat here, and they just did a layer of tres leches cake with some flan on top. It was good. It tasted good. It's not a real impossible cake, but we'll give them a pass because it was super tasty. So now let's talk about the not so great stuff. So the two entrees that were on offer this year, there was a tostada and a taco. The tostada had carnitas, but the carnitas just didn't really have much seasoning or flavor at all. They were kind of dry and bland. The tostada shell was nice, but that's just basically a fried tortilla, so not much to write home about there. On the taco, this one was made with costilla, which I think is sort of like a beef short rib. Again, just not a lot of flavor in the meat, which was surprising, but the biggest offender on the taco, the tortilla, was awful. I mean, it was just chewy and kind of cold and just, it was not a great taco. Well, my friends, we have come full circle. We are back here at Shimmering Sips where we started earlier today. This is where you redeem your passport if you've been doing Emile's Fromage Montage to get your final stamp and your completer treat. There's also some food and drink on offer here. Of course, it's called Shimmering Sips. You would expect there to be some nice drinks. We tried the mimosa flight here, which was lovely, and it was very much a good portion, which we appreciated. It was a little light on the champagne, heavier on the fruit mix-ins. So there were 3 flavors in the flight. There was a berry mimosa, a tropical mimosa, and a blood orange mimosa. The tropical was definitely the sweetest of the 3. The berry was kind of right there in the middle, and then the blood orange mimosa is kind of the more traditional mimosa flavor. All in all, it was fine. I appreciated that it was a lot of beverage for your money, but I do wish that maybe there had been a little bit more champagne and a little bit less of the mixers. The dessert on offer here is a guava cake, and last year we actually named this one of our best of the festival items. We still definitely like the guava cake a lot this year. It kind of almost had like a cornbread flavor going on in there, like it was kind of Probably had some cornmeal in the cake base, but a really nice guava flavor, still a great treat. And it's pretty amazing that it is vegan because it does not taste like a vegan dessert to me. But most importantly, let's talk about the thing you get here for free if you did Emile's Fromage Montage. So they will give you your final stamp here. And then you get a really lovely strawberry cheesecake soft serve. On top, they put a little bit of graham cracker crust crumbles. Sometimes I have mixed feelings about the completer treat that you get when you do these food crawls around the festival. This one was definitely one of the better ones. Plus, it's a cheese crawl. I mean, how can you not love going around the park, eating cheesy things all day, and then getting a dessert in the end for free? I think the Emile's Fromage Montage this year is a no-brainer. Right across from Shimmering Sips, you're gonna find Port of Entry, which is one of the gift shops where you can redeem your map for your special prize for finding Remi all around the park. If you've got kids in the room, you might wanna make them cover their ears because I'm about to give a huge spoiler. You don't actually have to put the stickers everywhere on the map, and you don't even have to put them in the right place. No one's gonna check your work. You could actually just bring an unfinished map in, they will stamp it and give you your prize. I share this bit of information mainly because I'm sure there are some frazzled parents out there who maybe didn't quite get to finish their scavenger hunt and just wanna turn it in for the prize. Don't worry, you can. In fact, that's what I'm gonna do right now. So I feel like the prizes that you get for doing the hide and squeak this year are really practical. They're kind of these little insulated bags. They're really cute. But what I love about them is if you have leftovers from the festival, you can throw them in the insulated bag, take them home with you or back to your resort, and you have something to nosh on later at night. Speaking of taking things home with you from the festival, we actually have one last booth to hit. It's not a booth so much as it is a restaurant. There are some special festival offerings at Connections Eatery and Cafe. The reason I wanted to save that for last is because I think this is the perfect treat to get right as you're leaving to take home with you to enjoy later because it travels really well. Let's go check it out. Well, my friends, we have made it to our final stop here at the festival. This is our last food location. We're at Connections Cafe and Eatery. So the cafe side is basically a Starbucks, but the eatery is on the other side of it. What I love about getting treats here for the festival, number one, you can mobile order them, and number two, you can eat them in this very comfortable air-conditioned space. Earlier, we tried the margarita that's on offer. I would say it tastes less like a margarita and more like a tequila sunrise made with Sunny D. I think that's probably the best way I can describe it. But this other treat that you get here, this is the Remi Liege waffle. What I love about this treat, number one, it's super tasty. The waffle itself is nice and moist and tender, even though it's pre-packaged. It's got a nice rich flavor too. You can really taste that cream cheese icing. This is one waffle I can enjoy just like it is. I don't even need to heat it up or add maple syrup or butter. It is delicious right out of the package. And that's why I think this is a great thing to grab as soon as you're walking out of the park. Just mobile order it, pick it up on your way out, just like I did here. Take it back with you to your hotel. It's a great midnight snack to have on hand, either at your hotel or where it is that you're staying after your Disney day. Well, my friends, that brings us to the end of our food and wine adventure. I hope you figured out all the delicious things you want to eat and drink when you're here for the festival. If you did, give this video a like, subscribe to our channel, and then ring that bell. That way you'll be notified whenever new videos like this come out. Until next time, don't forget to think happy thoughts, everybody. We'll see you again real soon.